Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Apologies for the lack of nice background, I'm still trying to figure that out. So in today's video I wanted to go through all the books that I read in 2021, and I just want to give you a brief summary of the books and whether I would recommend them or not. If you've seen my goals video, you would have seen that I thought I read 12 books this year, but unfortunately Goodreads lied to me. They've put one book in the list twice, so I've actually only read 11 books this year. Hopefully in a year's time you'll be seeing a similar video about the books I've read in 2022, and that will be more than 11, I'm sure. So without further ado, let's get into the video. The first book that I want to mention is The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. So as the name suggests, this book is all about habits. I was a little bit apprehensive at first because I'm not very big into non-fiction, self-helpy type books, but I am being proven wrong. So in this book, the author breaks down what habits are, how they form, how they can be broken, and generally how the mind works. And this is done in a really digestible and easy to understand manner, which I think is really good. And what also helps is that the book mentions real people and real studies, so it makes it a bit more relatable and it doesn't seem like a textbook. So I would really highly recommend this book to anyone, even if you don't have a habit that you want to change, or if you think you don't have a habit, you might find out you do. But yeah, it's just very, very interesting to see how we form habits and how much they impact us. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. So the next book I want to talk about is TheOne by John Mars. I think this is one of the longest books that I read this year. However, I probably read it the quickest because it was so interesting and page turning. This is a very different book to the previous one. This is a fiction novel which is all about a service that matches people to their destined partner based on their DNA compatibility. This service is very widely used in this book, so I realise it might sound a bit like wishy-washy, but I really enjoyed the book. It follows the lives of 5 different people that are involved with the matchmaking service in one way or another, and they all have very different stories to tell. But because there's 5 different main characters per se, you feel like you're getting 5 stories in one, so you only revisit the story of a character every 5th chapter, and that's probably one of the reasons why I wanted to keep reading, because you don't get bored of the same sort of storyline. I think there's also a Netflix show based on the same premise, so I'll have to give that a watch at some point. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I gave it a 5 out of 5. So the next book is My Sister the Serial Killer by Owen Braithwaite. And as you can see, this is the book that was in my list twice for some reason, but I only read it once. This is a very short and fast-paced book. I think it's the most fast-paced book I've ever read. It's quite different to all the other books I've read this year because it's so fast, and it's also set in Nigeria. Again, the title pretty much sums up the storyline. So it follows the lives of 2 girls, one of which is a serial killer. However, her sister is sort of on the fence whether she should reveal this to anyone else or whether she should keep the secret between them two. I don't want to say much more because I'll give away the book, but this is a really good one, especially if you're like in a reading slump and you just need something fast to get you out of there. So I would highly recommend this, and I gave it 4 out of 5 on Goodreads. Okay, moving on to book number 4 that I read is Substitute by Susie Holiday. Again, this is a fiction novel, but it's sort of a mix between a thriller and science fiction. I'm not usually a massive fan of science fiction, but again, this has opened my eyes more to the genre. So in this book, Chrissy is offered the opportunity to protect 3 of her loved ones from dying. That might sound too good to be true, but the catch is that you choose 3 people to die in their place, hence the name Substitute. And at first, Chrissy obviously doesn't believe in this program, but eventually she signs up for it, so I'm going to leave it at that. But again, highly recommend. I gave it 5 out of 5. So the next book is Money, A User's Guide by Laura Waitley. Please bear in mind that this book is a guide all about money, but the author is not a financial advisor, so do take it with a pinch of salt and do your own research. However, I think the author does a great job at explaining all the topics that we should know about money and that should be taught at schools but aren't. So this includes renting or buying property, student loans, debt, pensions, savings, investments, you name it. It's not the most detailed guide, but it gives you the starting point you need to understand the concept. I think it's a very, very good guide and a good introduction into how money works. It is written in the UK, so it's more applicable to the UK systems, so I'm not sure how helpful it would be if you're from another country. But I really liked this book and I gave it 5 out of 5. So next we have The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. I feel like I'm butchering all these names, I'm so sorry. So this is another thriller. I'm sure you're sensing a theme by now of what my favourite types of books are. So the plot is that Alicia is living a seemingly perfect life until one day she shoots her husband in the face and doesn't say a word ever again. So this mystery remains unsolved until one day a psychotherapist called Theo thinks he can get through to Alicia and to make her speak. I'm not going to give away whether he succeeds or what happens, obviously, but if you like thrillers then definitely check this one out. I gave it 5 out of 5. This is one of the favourite books of the year for me. So The Whisper Man by Alex North, yet another thriller / crime book. In this book, Tom and his young son moved to a little quiet village for a fresh start after the tragic death of his wife. However, they realise this village is far from quiet when a boy goes missing and Tom's son Jake starts acting strangely. So this leads to the police reopening a case of a killer who abducted boys from this village 15 years ago, and I'll leave it at that, but I gave this 4 out of 5. So the most well-known book that I've read in 2021 is definitely The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. If you haven't heard of this book or seen it advertised, then I don't know where you've been. But in this book, Nora enters the Midnight Library where she can choose to live a different life based on choices that she's made in the past. I don't think I'm explaining this very well, but you should give it a read. I think this book really makes you think about how you're spending your life and if that's how you want to be spending it and what choices you could make to spend it in other ways. As much as it's like a fiction book, I think it has quite a deep meaning and I would highly recommend. I gave it 5 out of 5. So next we've got What You Did by Claire McGowan. I have read The Other Wife by Claire McGowan and that was one of my favourite thriller books of all time. I think I mentioned that in another video which I'll link if I can find here. But yeah, I thought I'd give one of her other books a try as well. So in this book, Ali is faced with an impossible decision when her best friend makes an accusation against her husband. Obviously her husband denies this and therefore Ali knows that one of them is lying but she doesn't know who to believe. So that's all I'm going to say for now. I did really enjoy this book but I didn't think it was as good as The Other Wife, but nonetheless I still gave it 5 out of 5 on Goodreads. The Beekeepers Promised by Fiona Valpy is one that I just picked up from the Kindle 99p sale on a sort of whim because it had good reviews. I wanted to try something different and this is a historical fiction set in 1938, but I didn't really enjoy this book unfortunately. The book is about a heartbroken and hoping for a fresh start Abby who takes a summer job in rural France. I think I read about half of this book and then I sort of gave up because reading it just felt like a chore and I wasn't really enjoying it. So I guess I actually read like 10.5 books this year, not 12, not 11, 10.5. If you liked books set in the past, then you might like this. Even though I didn't even finish it, I gave it 3 out of 5 on Goodreads. So maybe I need to just rethink how generous I am on there. And finally, the last book I want to mention is 50/50 by Steve Kavanagh. This is a crime/thriller book yet again. In this book, 2 sisters are on trial for the murder of their father and they're both denying the crime and blaming each other. These women are very different individuals, but they end up on a joint trial where they each have to convince the jury that their sister is the murderer and not them. I really liked this book and gave it 4 out of 5. So that is all I read in 2021. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what books you've read or what you'd recommend, or if you want to read any of these books, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!